Ultimately, I think that Americans understand that everything that we have been through so far is just the leading edge of something much larger. Whether you want to call it the big meltdown, the collapse of society, or the perfect storm, the truth is that the party is ending. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. So why are so many Americans suddenly relocating, buying pea shooters, and storing up huge amounts of food? Well, look around you, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't seem like things are getting any better, especially for those areas in our country that have a high population density. So if you are able to, if you can do it, if it were me and my family and I were living in an area where the population was very dense, meaning that there were a lot of people per square mile, I may be thinking and considering, and probably already have done so, moving out of those areas. However, I understand that some people cannot. But let's go ahead and read along and see why is this happening in our country, where people are abandoning sometimes their homes that they've lived there for their whole lives to go to areas that they deem safer and better to live in than in a populated city. In 2020, we have been watching hundreds of thousands of Americans relocate. Gun sales have shattered all previous levels, and people are purchasing and storing huge stockpiles of food. I consider this a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. And why is that? Think about a large city that is extremely populated. And I'm not picking on New York. It's just that New York happens to be a large city. Exactly what does New York produce? You see, in my view, a large city such as New York does not really produce anything. A city that is very highly populated and population dense really is more of a consumer instead of a producer. And if you live in New York City, all right, I'm not beating up on you or anything like that, but think about it. Exactly what do large cities like that produce that add value? Do they farm? Do they have industrial centers where they manufacture quantities of things that the rest of the country and or the world needs? Whenever you think of exports, right, whenever you read articles about exports, they're mainly exports in foods and manufactured items. Those things don't come from large cities. So large cities are mainly consumers and not producers. And therein lies the problem. If you live in a large city and your city mainly consumes, and something happens to the infrastructure by which those things that you consume are funneled in, then where are you going to get those things that you consume? Like food, like water. If something happened to the electrical grid in New York City, how will you get your water? How will that water get to the 50th floor of an apartment building or an office building? Think about that. If something happened to the transportation infrastructure, where are you going to get your food? Where does your food come from? If you live in a large city, think about, where does your food come from? How does your water get delivered to you? It's a little different when you live out in an area that is more rural. Obviously, we all know that those rural areas are areas of production that do produce. We do have some exceptions of cities that do produce and manufacture, but for the most part, they don't produce and manufacture those things that we need in order to live. We have seen the American people get deeply concerned about the future before, but we have never seen anything like this. It is definitely a major life decision to pack up everything you own and move to another part of the country. But that is precisely what countless Americans have been doing in recent months. 246,000 New Yorkers have filed a change of address request just since the month of March. Ladies and gentlemen, that's 250,000 New Yorkers that have moved since March of this year. And it continues to say here, overall, since March, more than 246,000 people have filed a change of address request. That's almost a 100% increase compared to the same time period in 2019. And something that I haven't seen this article mention, ladies and gentlemen, is that in New York, crime has gone up steadily since the beginning of this year. So people are now fleeing New York, not only because of shutdowns or lockdowns, whatever you want to call it, but also because they see that crime is going up. And the unfortunate thing is this, is that most of those people that are leaving are people that can afford to leave. Those people that are staying behind are people that may not have the means to move because they either have a job that they have to stay at in order for them to afford to live, or because they just can't move at all, period, because they don't have a job. They're pretty much stuck there. It almost reminds me of a movie that came out a really long time ago, and I forgot the name of the guy that was in there. Yeah, I forgot his name. However, it was called Escape from LA. I think that was the name of the movie, Escape from LA. And it seems like that's what's going on now. People are trying to escape from these large populated areas because they can see what's going on. And let me say this, ladies and gentlemen, I get several comments and even some emails where people tell me, my extended family makes fun of me for prepping. My co-workers think I'm crazy for prepping. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Do your friends pay your bill and feed your family? Do your extended family, your cousins, your uncles, your grandparents, even your parents, if you're an adult, do they pay your bills? Do they feed your children? Do they feed you? Because if they don't, ladies and gentlemen, why are you listening to them? Why are you putting your faith that you will be fed, that your family will be fed, your children, your husband, your wife? Why are you putting your faith on what they think instead of doing what you feel is the best thing for you to do for you and your family? As far as I'm concerned, if somebody doesn't pay my bills, they have no say in what I do, be it prepping or anything else. So stop listening to those people that tell you that being prepared for anything is crazy, because really it's the other way around. Not being prepared is crazy. You know why? Because it's a risk that you're taking, not only with your family's safety, health, well-being, but with your family's security as well. Of course, people have been moving away from other major cities in very large numbers as well, and this has created a tremendous glut of empty apartments that need to be filled. So we have somewhat of a phenomenon going on right now. We have the prices of real estate going down dramatically in large cities, where the prices of real estate is going up dramatically in areas that are not as populated. There's people having bidding wars and things like that in suburban areas, in the country, in areas that just don't have as many people as the large cities do. Whereas in the cities itself, the prices of real estate, be it commercial real estate or residential real estate, is going down. And it says here, because there is now so much supply and so little demand, apartment rental prices have been plummeting, and this has especially been the case in San Francisco. San Francisco saw the prices fall the furthest in September, according to data from Realtor.com, with costs of a one-bedroom unit falling by 24.2%. Two other cities in California experienced the second and third drop in average one-bedroom rent prices, followed by Suffolk, Massachusetts, and Manhattan. Meanwhile, demand for housing in desirable rural and suburban areas has been skyrocketing. For example, we are told that there is a stunning real estate boom going on in Maine right now. Maine has seen a stunning real estate boom as buyers from New York City, Boston, and Washington, D.C. flee for quieter pastures, as this health crisis has caused home values to surge 17%, supply to hit a historical low, and properties to fly off the market in a matter of 11 days. If I was looking to relocate to the Northeast, Maine would definitely be one of the best places that I would consider. It is quite beautiful, crime is generally not a problem, and the population density is very low. According to one real estate agent, people have been calling and asking her to get me a house in Maine, and she is doing her best to fulfill those requests. And from what I understand, ladies and gentlemen, what I've read and heard is that people aren't even visiting the houses. They're just buying the houses sight unseen, meaning that they're just taking the word of the real estate agent along with the pictures that they get sent and saying, yes, I'm going to put a bid on this house. Meanwhile, Americans have been feverishly buying guns as well. In fact, the number of background checks that have been conducted this year has already broken the all-time record that was set last year. The FBI's NICS, a widely accepted proxy, shows a 41% increase in activity during the first 9 months of this year compared to the same period in 2019, which was a record year, with 28.8 million background checks through the end of September. This year's surge has already surpassed last year's all-time high of 28.4 million. When people buy more guns, ladies and gentlemen, they buy more ammunition, and that's why there's an ammunition shortage right now. I know that there are several calibers here where I live in Alaska that are not available. They're just not available. In a previous article, I discussed the fact that millions of Americans are also focused on storing up food right now. In fact, one recent survey discovered that more than 50% of Americans already have or plan to stockpile food and other essentials. At this point, so many Americans are stockpiling food that it has actually caused a very serious shortage in mason jars. According to one small business owner, a 12-pack of jars will now often sell for as much as $70. If you all remember one of my previous payday preps where I bought 12 packs of jars, I spent $96 on those 6 jars, and that I thought was expensive. And now one 12-pack is going for $70. That right there is a great example of why we prep. So why are so many Americans going through such extremes all of a sudden? Of course, many are concerned about the upcoming election, but that will come and go. Others are worried that the next wave of this health crisis could be even worse than what we have already experienced. Some people that I talk to believe that our economic problems and the civil unrest in our major cities will get worse, and I agree with that assessment. I have to agree with that as well, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion. Our economic problems, our financial problems, they're not going to get any better. We live in what is called a debt-based monetary system. The day that the banks stop printing will be the day that our economic system will fail. For those of you that don't understand how it works, in a debt monetary system, the debt has to continuously rise. That is why deflation is such a bad word to central banks. Deflation is the worst thing that can happen in a debt-based monetary system. Ultimately, I think that Americans understand that everything that we have been through so far is just the leading edge of something much larger. Whether you want to call it the big meltdown, the collapse of society, or the perfect storm, the truth is that the party is ending. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the gig is up. And you know, in my opinion, the biggest threat that our nation faces, the biggest threat that will cause hunger, that will be a national security threat, is our financial system. I do believe that the government has a backup system in place. And for many of you that have not heard about this, the Federal Reserve banks have been told that by the 1st of January of 2021, they will have a cryptocurrency wallet for every American. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? By the 1st of January 2021, all central banks will have a cryptocurrency wallet for every American. I've said it for a long time that I believe that our government / Federal Reserve, whatever you want to call it, already has a backup system in place. However, this backup system will be based on a fiat currency as well, which I don't believe will last anywhere as long as the current one has. Every day we get more evidence that our society is unraveling right in front of our eyes. And I work very hard to document that evidence for my readers. We are heading into times that are going to be absolutely catastrophic for our nation. And on a gut level, a lot of people out there know that this is true. Are you one of those people that think that everything's going to be just fine? Well, for some, it will be. For those people that have taken the time to supply themselves with those things that they need to continue to live and to continue to support their way of life or their standard of living, things will be okay. They may not be as good as it is now, but during the climax of whatever it is that's going to happen, because trust me, ladies and gentlemen, there will be another big crisis. There has to be. The only way that this system can keep us, we the people, under control is by inducing fear and creating crisis after crisis. Ask yourselves, for those of you that maybe have kids that are 15 or even up to 20 years old, in their lifetimes, what year have they lived in the last 20 years where there hasn't been some kind of a crisis? There always has to be a crisis because people have to be controlled with fear. It's the easiest way to control people, with fear. All right? Dividing people is another way of controlling people. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, that for those who are critical of the actions that you are taking in order to secure your family's well-being, ask yourselves, do you pay my bills? If they don't, then you really have no reason to be listening to them. Having said that, thank you very much for joining in today. Thank you very much for spending a few minutes here with me today. I hope you have a great weekend. We will see you tomorrow, Sunday, at 12 p.m. or 12 noon Alaska time for our live stream. Hope to see you there. Have a great day. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. This is Alaska Prepper. I am out.